Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Today we are going to mess about, this evening we're going to mess about with some spaghetti bolognese. Now to be technical, spaghetti is the pasta bit and the bolognese is the saucy stuff that goes on top of the spaghetti. But as a consequence of what we're going to be working with, we have a new apron. And the reason we have one of these is not to look chefy, because I am far from it. The reason for having one of these is I'm getting absolutely fed up with getting orange spots all over my shirts. So that's what this is for. And it's just about long enough to tie around my rather large waist. There we go. Now in theory I should stop all the spots going all over my shirt while I'm cooking. That is the theory. Right, now I'll move the camera and I'll probably speed this bit up because there's a little bit of preparation, not a lot, but there's a little bit of preparation. So we'll move over to that. Right, as far as preparation is concerned, we've got some onions to sort out, which might involve wiping our eyes a bit, certainly washing our hands. We have some mushrooms to chop up, let's put them to one side, and eventually our 5% fat mince beef will get put in to cook. But really the preparation is just getting the onions and the mushrooms sorted out. But if you're cooking a spaghetti, if you look at any Italian chef that is preparing a spaghetti, if they haven't got one of them, they're not a proper chef. I remember back in the old days of black and white TV, there was a guy on TV, either something Floyd or Floyd something or other, and he used to have a glass of wine on the go, but if you kept your eye on the programme, it went down to there, back up to there, down to there, back up to there, and by the end of the programme he was quite Brahms and Liszt. And they let it go. It was still... They let it go. I'm really surprised you wouldn't get away with that now. But this is my channel. I can get away with whatever I like. So anyway, we need to do some preparation. So let's get on with that. Right, so over here our onions are still on a low heat. They're not showing signs of browning yet, but we can soon sort that out. They're soft, so they're sweated down as the expression goes. There's still some quite chunky bits in there as well. So at this point we turn the heat up and we actually get these going a bit more fierce. So we should get bubbling away nicely now. Now at some point I'm going to have to turn the extractor fan off, or the smoky things coming off of this cooking will set the fire alarm off. That's the downside of living in rented accommodation. You have to have the fire alarms. I suppose it would be sensible in non-rented accommodation, but I've lived all my life in places without a fire alarm and managed quite nicely. But then I've never had a fire. I would imagine if I had one without an alarm, I'd be well annoyed. Right, let's get the lids off of these. They're vacuum packed, so sometimes they can be quite difficult to actually undo. Now what we've got here, these are store-bought, but this is a bolognese sauce with onion and garlic. And this one isn't. This is called chunky mushroom. So that's got extra mushrooms in that are effectively marinated in the sauce. So they're different to the ones that I'm adding, which will not cook down into soggy messes. They will still have some texture to them by the time I've finished. Right, we're just starting to get a bit of brown now on the onions, so a little bit longer. It's all watch it and see sort of thing. But while you're watching it and waiting for magical things to happen, we remember that over the other side of the kitchen we've got some of this. Now I hate to do this, but some of this is going to go in there in a minute. Not yet. Oh, that is I'll show you because it hasn't, I don't think it's got a brand on it, I don't care. That is a Chianti Classico Reserva. Ideal for a spaghetti bolognese. Ideal. You'd probably have a job to choose a better wine to go with a spaghetti, quite honestly. So there we are, we're just starting to brown. So what I do now is I edge this pan so that the onions can be piled up on one side, not directly over the heat. Give it a tip. So the oil that's been cooking, that the onions have been cooking in, drains down into this part of the pan, which is now awaiting the mushrooms. So they now go in without that great dollop of dirt. Quite honestly, I'm not a worrier about dirty mushrooms. I mean, some people, you know, they wash them like mad and they get them absolutely spotless and clean, and then they're all wet and soggy and they don't cook as good. And quite honestly, the peaty type of soil that commercial mushrooms are grown in is sort of sterile, really. And if you want a good immune system, eat more dirt. This sterile environment that we've allowed to develop over the last 20-30 years is not good for our health, quite honestly. Everybody thinks the opposite way. I need everything sterile, I need everything clean so that I don't get infections. We have an immune system that has evolved over thousands and thousands of years to do that job. And quite honestly, it does it pretty well. When it doesn't do it very well is when it's diluted with all sorts of chemicals and treatments and cobblers like that. Eat more dirt. And I mean, I'm one that will happily find water to drink out in the open. It might not be perfectly clean, but the opposite, we haven't got any water then, and we're dehydrated and it's hot. I'd rather drink that water. And my immune system will probably cope with it. Because I try not to chuck too much rubbish at it and water it down. So there we go. We can get a little bit of health on this. But at the end of the day, we are diluting our immune systems by the way that we eat. We don't give it enough work to do. Because everything we eat is sterile and clean, and that's not how food should be. You know, you should be able to pick an apple off a tree and eat it. It shouldn't need a wash. The only reason it needs a wash is because the people growing it have sprayed it in obnoxious chemicals that we're not supposed to eat. so it needs a wash. But in the natural world, fruit, vegetables, root crops, meat, fish, just get on and eat it. Keep mucking about with it. Still, we want it cheap, and we want it from a supermarket. Now, a supermarket can only sell it if it's in nice, squeaky clean, packages with neat labels on, and that's how we want to eat nowadays. So you make your choice. If you eat that way permanently, your immune system will not be as good as it should be. And if it's not as good as it should be, you'll probably get little infections and little illnesses and colds and flu and stuff like that, because you haven't got the ability to fight it off. Right, so our mushrooms are now cooked, and our onions haven't got too far overcooked by being at one end of the pan. And now what we do is we push all that lot up to one end again. There we go. Trying to leave a bit of pan that's clean, and move it over a little bit more, and then we dump the meat in. And the strange thing that hasn't happened is Mojo's not here, my cat, because Mojo loves raw beef. Absolutely loves it. And normally he knows when it's around, when he's out here, and he wants bits. And he gets bits. See, again, we play with our pets. Cats are carnivores. They eat meat. They are not naturally fish eaters. They're not naturally rice eaters or vegetable eaters. They eat meat. And all this pet food that we buy, with all these ingredients, it's not that good for them. But it's been allowed because it has the nutrition that they say the cats need. And that's not the same as having the right sort of food. So my cats get some raw meat. I buy a pack once a month. It comes in a freezer box, goes in the freezer, and each day one of those packs comes out and the cats share it. And it's real meat. It's gently steamed, real meat. Supposedly human quality. I haven't tried it yet. Right, so what we're doing now is we're getting this mince to cook, and it's on quite a fierce heat on half of the pan, which means my mushrooms and my onions aren't getting burnt over in the corner there. And we just keep flipping this basically and stirring, so that the cooked bits, which are a totally different colour, mix in with the uncooked bits, and gradually it all becomes cooked bits. The idea is that by the time I've finished poking and prodding, we don't have many pink bits left. And if we've got a few pink bits, it's not the end of the world, because it's going to carry on cooking for a while. I would prefer it to have the sauces poured on to non-pink bits. But at the end of the day, it's beef. If you went to a restaurant and asked for a steak, and they allowed you to have it well done, then it's not a very good restaurant, because that's not the way you cook a steak. You don't have to have it rare, but medium rare is a good bet. And if you're not so keen on that, medium is not a bad idea. But well done is not good, because you've just ruined all the texture and the value of the meat. Probably taken away all the goodness that would have helped your immune system. Anyway, this meat needs to be cooked through reasonably well, because once the sauces go on, it's not going to cook in the way it's cooking now, which is being fried, which is a fierce heat. So it's cooking through reasonably quickly. It's like chewed up steak at the end of the day. It is beef. So we're nearly there now. That's that bit. And there's no bright pink bits left now. All we're left with some subtly pink bits, and most of it is not pink anymore. So that's good enough. So we can now stir in our onions and our mushrooms to get a reasonably even mix. It's not that important. It's going to get stirred 20,000 times between now and when I serve it. And what I like about this mince is because it's 5% fat. How much juice have we got? Virtually none. This is not full of meat fat. So if you're watching your calories, don't buy the fatty mince. Right, so that's that. Then we have one of those. And we have one of those. That's the bit that gets my shirt in a mess. Now what we do is turn our heat right down, because we've got a very hot pan at the moment. And we give that a quick stir, now getting the pan back to even heat over the whole pan, not just half of it. And just stir that in, because that's cold, you know, that's come out of the cupboard. So that's reduced the heat dramatically. So that's that bit done, just stir that in. Now what we do is we go and get some water in these jars and give them a bit of a rinse, because there's still some good stuff in there. We don't have to worry about it watering down the sauce too much, because we've still got our it's our spice packs, which have got thickeners in them. So we give that bit of water a good shake, and that way we get all the bits that are left in the jar out. So that's that done. So that's our liquid in effect. That is now our sauces. And that is still a bit watery for my, you know, given that normally I'd have 3 of those. This time we've only got 2. Nonetheless, it still looks a bit watery, but we shall see. And then what we've got is 2 spice packs. If I can get the scissors without whapping the tripod. I have to open the drawer. Now these have got chili and paprika in them, and it pays not to get them on your fingers if you're going to rub your eyes. Do it once, you'll know exactly what I mean, and do it once, you'll probably never do it again. So don't get this on your fingers, and if you do, wash your hands. It's quite strong stuff. Basically, because it's got to be added to large volumes. Now, I always have 2, because one never seems to sort of do the job quite enough. So there we go, that's the 2 spice packs with their thickeners, and then we gently stir that in. And you'll see it thicken up. As this stirs in, you'll see it get thicker. And then as that gets the heat, the thickeners will keep going, and this will get thicker and thicker for a while until it reaches the maximum thickness it can get, which needs heat. Now, I don't see any bloops yet, but I know when we're back up to temperature because it starts blooping, which I don't think it is yet. When it gets to that bloop stage, it has to be turned right down. I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're not far off. So we'll just pop our scissors back in the drawer, and then I will get some kitchen towel and mop up the amount of spilled, actually I'm gonna do something naughty now. I've spilt a bit of the pack, so I've got it onto my hands and put it in there, and what we will now do is wash our hands thoroughly, because that chili and paprika is now all over my hands, and knowing me, I'll be daft enough to rub my eyes in a minute, so we'll wash that off. And as we've handled meat, we ought to be washing our hands anyway. So there we go, and I hear blooping. That is the temperature I wanted to get to. I now turn my heat down to as low as it will go. Absolutely as low as it will go. And it will sit there and do that for about 15 to 20 minutes. During that time, I will probably have a little bit more wine. Well, what else is there to do? Right, so that goes right down as low as it will go now. Absolutely bare minimum heat. just the slightest bit of blue without it going out, and we'll leave that now, and I'll come back in a bit. So there's not much else to do really. Right, so the problem with filming is it slows things down. So consequently, I am eating late tonight, later than normal. So we've got our bolognese ready. We now need to get our spaghetti itself ready. I always have slightly salted water. Not much though, because you will get in there and you will have a salty taste. Boil the kettle with some hot water. There is, I don't believe, a more efficient way of boiling water, so we use the kettle. And then we just bring it back up to the boil. Which will take a minute or two, because like an idiot I boiled the kettle 5 minutes ago and forgot to reboil it before I poured it in there. Duh! And it's not too much of this. I don't think we're halfway down the bottle yet. Where are we? Nearly half. The thing is, I drink wine with my evening meal virtually every day, and I don't worry about it because it's something that I enjoy too much to worry about. But I don't have huge amounts each time, but there are occasions when I open a posh bottle, as I call it, and it won't be as good tomorrow, so I may well finish it tonight. But if I do, I will be up 2 or 3 times in the night to deal with it. Now last night I didn't get up at all. Now at my age that's pretty good going, but it's probably because I finished the little bit of wine I had last night at about 6:30, 7 o'clock. So that may be the reason. Right, so what we're dealing with here is water coming to the boil. There's no point in putting the spaghetti in till that's bubbling, as in a fast bubble, because it won't go in there unless it's bubbling fast. This has had chance to cook more than just sitting there doing nothing. So having a gentle heat on it is infusing those flavours and cooking the mushrooms and onions and meat a little bit more than the original flash cook that happened at the beginning. So that's now all merged together as a single unit, all with roughly the same flavour. Right, we're just coming up to the boil now. I've got some spaghetti in here, but they're not enough for today, so we'll get that out. And I have a way of measuring my spaghetti. Let me just get that out of the way. We'll put that down. Ping! It just broke off. And it's all geared on how much will fit in my fingers. So we'll open a new box. We used to be able to get this in a really big pack, but it comes in smaller boxes now, if you want this brand, which I do. And then, given that we've got some out already, we'll get a bit more out and then we'll pick it up. The reason I pick it up is because I want to do that, and I have a stored memory of what is roughly the right amount for me, one portion, and that'll do. That's roughly it. So we stick that in the saucepan and stick that back in the cupboard because we won't need it anymore. Closing the end of the box and pushing the end of the box up at the edge of the cupboard so that it doesn't open again. And that will go out for recycling because it's cardboard. So that's the spaghetti on. And then what I do is I keep pushing. I just keep pushing it. Now some would have trouble with this because the heat's coming up round the side of the saucepan. It's quite hot, and if you haven't got heat resistant hands, I'll call them, or asbestos fingers as some people call them, that might be a bit difficult for you. The only difference will be is it will take longer to get it down in the pan. A simple solution might be to use a much bigger pan, but you use a lot more heat. And then as soon as it tucks down on the inside of the rim, I can get my fork and poke it in. And then what I do is I tease it. And I do that to stop it sticking together. Because when it goes in, if it's good quality spaghetti, it won't stick. But if it's not, then if you just get that into the pan like that and leave it, when you come to stir it, it'll all be stuck together and it's horrible. It's because there's too much starch involved, I suspect. Is there any starch in durum wheat? I don't know. Anyway, that's now separated. Each one of those spaghetti stalks, sticks, whatever you want to call them, is now totally separated, and the water is boiling nicely. So what we do now is we turn that down to a simmer, and then what I do is I get my gadget out, because I'm no good at remembering times. And what this does, it's a timer, and I want 11 minutes. So we start that off, and that will count down for 11 minutes. Some people like 10, which would mean you'd have slightly, I forget, there's a special expression for pasta that's not soggy. I forget what the expression is. Somebody will tell me in the comments, I'm sure. Begins with A, I think. But anyway, I like mine in between soggy and stiff. And 11 minutes on this type of pasta, this brand, works just fine. So that's what I do. So given we got a while to wait, I'll stop again. Okay, we're back. We've got about 2.5 minutes to go for that to be cooked. But in the meantime, we need to sort that out. Because in case you hadn't twigged it, but that is not a meal. It is many meals. And that's the bit I need to deal with next. So what we do, get that out of the way, we get our big spoon, and we start portioning this up to go in the freezer. These are future meals. And roughly a portion is $3, roughly. And then we'll put those over there to cool, and then before I go to bed tonight they will go in the freezer. Now, there's a thing about freezers. They work much, much, much more efficiently if they're full, because trying to chill down air is expensive. You're using a lot more of your electricity to cool nothing. So the fuller it is, the better. So I quite like the idea of shoving these in the freezer, taking up room. Now I don't know how many I'm going to get, because I will get less this time because I've used 1 jar less of the sauces. But nonetheless, I still think we should get, let me think, what have we got there? We've got 4. And because I'm in a mood for food, I'm going to leave what's left, because what's left will not make 2. It'll make 1 big one. So tonight I will have a big one, as they say. Steady there. So there we go, that's 4 for the freezer. Some spares for next time. And we're nearly ready to serve what I'm going to eat tonight, which is what's left in that pan. We need to turn the heat off now, because it'll, you know, the reduced amount in the pan is not good for the amount of heat that's going in there. And that's what's left of the bottle, I'm afraid. So that is the bottle gone. Oops, that's the timer. Don't vacate the premises, it's just the food timer, or the kitchen timer. So what we've got to do now is get that out into the sieve to drain. And give the sauce for the quick rinse as well, because pasta tends to stick, to say the least. And that goes on my plate, and that is rather a large portion, I must admit. But then again, I've been busy today. I've earned my meal. If it's a bit big, so be it. So that's that, and then all of this comes out and goes on the plate. And that is a large portion, but like I said, I've earned this today. I've done a lot. And a lot of admin. Sorted out a lot of things on the computer, or the laptop, whatever you want to call it. And I've been busy. So that's my meal for tonight. And I'm happy with that. But what I don't forget to do is quickly rinse the pot that it was all cooked in. Because if that sets overnight, it will be an absolute pig to wash up tomorrow. I don't wash up on the day I cook, because I cook in the evening. I leave it, and the next day I wash up. So we'll just give that a quick rinse. Get the worst of it off, and the rest will be sorted out tomorrow. So that's that done. So that's my clearing up done. Now there's two things left to do. One of them is lots of black pepper of the medium grade. I like a lot of pepper on spaghetti, so we will be putting a lot on. There we go. Jolly good. And then the other thing that you're supposed to do is get the old Parmesan cheese. Well, I haven't got any, so I can't use what I haven't got. So basically I've got my fork to eat it with. I don't have any spoons or mucking about like that. I'm quite happy with just a fork. I've got my Chianti. I will now go sit down and enjoy my meal. Thanks for watching. Bit of a different from the orchid stuff, I suppose, but some people like this sort of thing. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.